Saturday morning, 9 o'clock in Miami, Florida. People are getting on about their business of enjoying the weekend. A resident of a downtown high-rise apartment building named Michael Pearson is strolling across the courtyard in front of his building on his way to his car. All of a sudden, he's watching a human explode on the sidewalk next to him. Now, where did he come from?
Miami Police, number 200, this footage emergency. Someone just jumped right in front of me. Hello? Yeah, someone just suicided themselves, just jumped. From where? From off the tower, all the way down to the first floor. That's the address of your emergency? Yes. Are you ready, John?
I spent my career closing murder cases. But I'm not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breed to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, to find justice for the dead. That's what it takes to be an American detective.
My first name is Joseph. My last name is Shalacy. Very proud to say that I worked with the City of Miami Police Department, roughly 29 to 30 years of service. I was a homicide detective from 2001 to 2006.
2029. Repeat location for 14.
I'd worked 3 straight days. I was mentally and physically exhausted and extremely excited about going home. My family is everything to me.
Lazy.
Hey, Sarge.
I get a call from Detective Rodriguez. Said, "Hey, Sarge, we got a jumper. I know you're tired going home. I got this. I'll take care of it."
Okay. Oh, you won't, brother. Thanks.
I don't know what it was, but when I hung up the phone, something felt different within me. I had to go there.
When Shalacy arrives at this scene, he's in a courtyard of a high-end apartment complex on Biscayne Bay.
When I was brand new in homicide, I had a really good trainer at the time. And he said, "I want you to always remember this and never forget it, ever. Don't you ever, ever let anybody see you with that deer in the headlight look, ever. Because people are counting on you. People are very desperate and counting on you to walk that walk and talk that talk." I was only into homicide for 3 months, and I live by that motto. Not because I'm cocky, not because I'm arrogant, but because people are relying on me. So I do have to walk that walk and talk that talk.
Shalacy, what the hell are you doing here?
I said, just give me a couple of minutes to see what's going on, and then, I'll go home.
What we got?
It was surreal because you have all this life around you, but then right at your feet, you have death. I pulled the sheet back, and I was immediately struck by how young he looked. And I thought to myself, what would be so bad in this man's life that he would do something so horrific, so desperate, so lonely.
Rick, do you see this?
But then I quickly realized that something's not right. The last thing I was expecting to see were the stab marks. So then I took kind of like a step back emotionally and started to really look deeper.
Shalacy also sees incised wounds, cuts in his arms, his hands, and his wrists. Are those defensive wounds? Trying to protect himself from somebody wielding a blade?
One of the first things we look for are the fingernails. He had chipped fingernails, like if he were struggling or fighting for his life. I don't think he jumped from the balcony. I think he was thrown from the balcony.
All right, everyone, come on, gather around.
I told everybody they had to stop what they were doing. We had to find the crime scene because that's where this all happened. That's the primary scene.
Shalacy looks around him and sees 20 stories of apartments. Which one is the magic one? He doesn't know.
When we were out there in the courtyard, we noticed cameras.
Yeah, we got cameras stationed all over the place.
I locate the security director to see if he could give me access to the footage.
They look at surveillance video from the parking garage in the complex from that morning and prior evening.
Well, was it right there?
He sees a car enter this complex at 6:50 in the morning, containing an individual who is the person lying dead under a sheet in the courtyard of that building.
Who's that right there?
We actually see a young woman that's in the passenger seat with him.
He sees a female wearing a red track jacket. Who is she? And how can she be with this guy 2 hours and 10 minutes before his death? Is she part of this?
We had to find that girl. She could unlock a lot of unanswered questions for us.
I haven't heard a thing.
Banging, screaming, nothing?
Nothing.
During the canvas, I was getting extremely frustrated because we weren't getting the help we were hoping for. Nobody saw anything. Nobody heard anything.
Seen him at all?
Out of sight, out of mind. That's the best way to put it.
Joe?
What's up? What's that?
Yeah, I think I got something.
As we were doing our canvas, Detective Rodriguez actually saw some blinds blowing outward from one of the rooms.
What floor are you looking at?
13? No. It's 14.
They determine that the apartment in question is apartment 1414.
Miami Police Department, open the door.
The tenant of that apartment is a single male whose name is James Glass, and he's 23 years of age.
When we knocked on the door, there was no answer.
Can you unlock it, please?
We had exigent circumstances to go in.
Yeah, this is the place.
As soon as we made entry and I saw the blood, I knew that this was our scene.
There's a bloody blanket on a sofa. They can see blood on the floor. There's blood everywhere.
Claire!
I immediately realized that apartment 1414 belonged to our victim, James Glass, at the bottom of the building.
So now they know who he is and where he came from. The question remains, how did he get that way?
So now, at that point, I kind of saw out of my peripheral some bloody drag marks going off. So I peeled off from the group and followed the bloody trail into the bathroom.
In the bathroom, he finds a bloody towel on the floor. And out of the corner of his eye, he sees something in the bathtub.
And I couldn't believe the horror of what I saw. I still can't believe it. I just remember holding my breath. I didn't really think what I was seeing is what I was seeing. It was too surreal to me.
In the bathtub is a female dressed in her underwear, and her hair is matted with blood. Shalacy looks at her and realizes it's the girl from the surveillance video in the garage. This woman's not a witness. She's not a suspect. She's victim number 2.
Jose!
I was so shocked.
Jose!
I just couldn't get past the innocence of what she looked like to me. It's not that I'm just seeing the victim laying in the bathtub. I'm seeing my own children.
Shalacy's emotion was hinged to his family. He pictured his daughter in that bathtub. I understand that. I've been there, and it is beyond ugly.
After getting over the initial shock, my immediate thoughts were, we had a double homicide. I noticed that there's a tremendous amount of blood coming from underneath her chest.
He sees 2 stab wounds in the central chest. They appear to be deep. He also sees blunt force trauma to the head, producing the matted blood in the hair. So he looks around in the bathroom to see if there are any weapons in here. And he sees a pair of bloody scissors on the sink.
There was some hair that was inside the fold of the scissors that looked like it matched the black hair of the victim. And then I could see some blood droplets. It was very apparent to me that somebody had stabbed her with those scissors. There was an iron that had some blood on it. It looked like the cord had been broken off of it, which in my line of work, that's called a clue, a big clue.
Most likely, the iron is used as an instrument of blunt trauma. But why is the cord ripped out of that iron? Was your attempt to strangle the victim with that?
We also saw some cleaning supplies.
It's apparent that someone had thought to try to clean this up. But it's a feeble attempt.
After being in that bathroom for just a very short period of time, I found myself literally in hell.
There is a purse in the living room of this apartment that has been dumped on the floor.
Going through the belongings, we were able to find identification that belonged to 26-year-old Amy Hoyos. That was the young lady that was in the bathtub. We actually found a couple of cell phones on the floor And it looked like one of the cell phones may have belonged to Amy.
It looks like this is passcode protected. We're gonna need a warrant to get in.
If we could just get into the phone, that would certainly unlock a lot of clues or information that would be helpful in this case.
What else we looking at here, gang?
Right here, detective.
We discovered there was a bloody knife. Obviously, that was going to be a weapon that was used.
Someone is motivated to kill these people. Use a blade or a pair of scissors, then it's because you mean it. And when you're worried that the stab wounds aren't going to work, you hit this girl over the head with an iron. And you throw the male off a balcony 14 stories above the street. You are determined that these people have to die.
Good. I want to see if I can get in touch with the families. Are you okay to oversee this?
Yeah, man, I got this.
All right. Thank you.
What is going on between these people? We now find them to be united in death. How were they in life? Families are the best source for that kind of information.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
I got a hold of Amy's father first.
Is Amy in some sort of trouble?
Couldn't even get the words out. I do remember not being able to tell him, your daughter is dead.
Oh, she's gone.
I can only say your daughter's gone.
No.
Just an experience that I'll never forget for as long as I'm alive. I knew, I could hear it in his voice, how much he loved his daughter. I just felt like I wronged him in the worst way.
No.
Everything that he lived for, his mere existence, in a blink of an eye, was gone.
Getting that type of news is devastating. It really is. That your little sister is gone. I never imagined that something like this would happen.
Amy was a beautiful person, beautiful inside and out. She was just always thoughtful and wanted to put people first. She just had a really kind soul.
Amy was a receptionist, and she also may have done a little bit of club promoting here and there, but it wasn't like her aspirations in life. She did it happily, but she really wanted to be a firefighter.
She was a tough girl, but she had that soft heart. She always wanted to care for others. Amy would have been amazing as a firefighter.
Mr. Hoyes, what can you tell me about Amy's friend James? Did you know him well?
No, not really.
Trying to figure out what their relationship was very, very important.
From what my sister told me, James was new here. His family was from Texas. He didn't really know anyone. And so she wanted to be a good friend to him.
James was a normal guy. The relationship between Amy and James was strictly friendship. There was never anything more to it. She's a caretaker. So, she just kind of wanted to be that friend to kind of show him around the city.
And what about last night? Do you know what Amy was doing?
She was at her sister's.
I was moving to Boca, and Amy was helping me move. She had said she was going to stay with me that night. And when I woke up in the morning, I realized she wasn't there. Part of me was surprised, and part of me was, that's just like her. Many times I thought if she'd just stayed, if she hadn't gone, maybe she'd still be here.
Hey, I promise you, I will figure out who did this to your daughter.
And I can tell you one thing for sure, I was going to get that man answers. I was going to get that man answers.
Shalacy gets in contact by telephone with James Glass's family in North Texas.
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, sir, but something's happened to your son, James.
Death notification, to me personally, is the hardest part of the job because you're essentially going to a mother or father, brother or sister, and you're turning their lives upside down. When I called his dad, I learned that James's family, they were in a real estate business, and James actually had come to Miami to start up his own real estate business. Searching the apartment, there was some paperwork that we found that dealt with him trying to start up a real estate business, but he didn't complete it.
Well, what about Amy? Did he ever mention her?
Yeah, he brought her up a couple times.
James's father knew very little about Amy, but he did know that James really liked her. He liked her so much that he was showing the family her picture at a wedding that he went to in Texas.
Did James have issues with anyone that you knew of?
James's dad said no. He did not have any enemies that they were aware of.
We'll be in touch as soon as we find anything out. Thank you. Hey, come on in.
It looks like the last call in the call log was from a local number.
That's great. Let's try it.
Being able to get the search warrant and get into Amy's phone was very instrumental in this investigation.
When Shalacy calls that last number,
Hello?
a guy answers immediately. Shalacy says, "Are you a friend of Amy Hoyos?"
Who's this?
It's Detective Shalazy with the Miami Police Department.
What? Wait, the police? What exactly is this about?
He kept asking me questions that I could provide. I can't tell him what's going on because I don't know who he is.
Sir, did you speak with an Amy Hoyos last night? Hello?
He hung up on me. That's making him very, very, very suspicious.
Shalacy knows it's time to find out what is the story with this guy and how does he know a girl that happens to be dead in a bathtub.
What do you want?
Sir, do not hang up on me. I need you to listen to me.
I did not recognize the phone number that called me. I said, look, I don't know who you are. For all I know, you could be somebody crazy. I said, why don't you give me your name, badge number, and what department you're with, and let me verify who you are.
Our policy is that we have to identify ourselves. So I gave him my badge number. Then he started to open up and share some more information about himself and Amy.
My name's Abe Metz.
He says his name is Abe Metz. He drives a limousine for a living, and he does take some rather well-known people around Miami.
Based on experience and background, I did not want to divulge information about people who I know or clients to anybody without first vetting who they are.
Okay. All right, I understand that, Abe, and I'm sorry for the confusion. Now, do you think you can please tell me how you know Amy?
Amy was a club promoter, and I was at the time working for a larger limousine company, and I had met her through hotel concierges where she would promote the clubs that she was engaged with.
See you.
The business relationship that we had ended up turning into a friendship.
All right, so why were you in contact with her last night? Did you see her?
So at this point, the case gets really interesting because the limo driver tells me him and Amy were at a club with James.
We met up with James.
This is James.
And this other gentleman named Juan.
James just moved here from Texas.
How do you like Miami? It's an adjustment, but
There were no issues at the club. There was no instances of any argument or any fight or spat.
You guys ready for these shots?
shots, yeah, let's do some shots.
The nightlife in Miami is very different from anywhere else. When you go out to a club, pretty much the norm is show up about 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when the party is really starting to happen.
Miami nightlife is known to get a late start. They say that Miami Beach doesn't really wake up till 11 p.m. And it's very normal for people to end their nights or mornings at 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
What are you drinking, Abe?
No, I'm good. Early morning.
So Abe says that he decided to leave the bar because he had to work the next day.
Now I know that James, Amy, and Juan were together, all three of them, at the club.
You know Juan's last name?
No, I don't. I think he said he lives in the same apartment complex as James. Look,
I can't talk right now. I'm waiting to pick up a client.
I gotta go.
All right, thanks.
Now I want to know who Juan is.
Let's go.
So Lacey goes back to the apartment complex and asks the resident manager, is there anybody named Juan who lives here? Well, there's a guy named Juan Diaz who lives on the 10th floor. He's 26 years old. That could work.
You should have a seat, Mr. Diaz.
Mr. Diaz was cooperative. He comes to the station and he gives me a tape recorded statement.
I want to do a timeline on exactly what involvement you had with James Glass and Amy Boya.
Okay. I met with James in my house. We have a couple of years. Then he told me, like, man, let's go to a player because Amy's going to go there.
During that tape recorded statement, he gives me detail after detail, a timeline of what transpired.
We were there like for about 20 minutes, and then I saw Amy talking to a guy. And then she said, I want to meet my friend.
The limo driver. So she introduces you to Amy.
Yeah.
Now, that was around 1:45?
1:45, yeah.
Juan says it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and they decided they were going to go home and continue to party.
We went to James' apartment. We used the back entrance.
He told us that while they were at the apartment, Amy was uncomfortable with Mr. Diaz because she thought he was going to give drugs to James.
She was saying that I want you to be careful with James because he used to do a lot of drugs before.
He used to do a lot of drugs.
Yeah.
She was trying to help James, so she didn't want any drugs in that apartment. So she asked James to ask Juan to leave.
He was like, man, I think she's probably give up. I'm like, oh, man, I was about to go to the night. I went to bed. That was her.
Never saw him again.
Never saw him again.
And that was around 3:45?
3:40.
So Lacey looks at Juan and says, you understand what you've just told me, don't you? You're the last person in contact with two people who are now dead as a result of a violent attack. And Juan sees where this conversation is going and says, now, wait a minute. I wasn't the last guy to leave.
The limo driver?
Well, when you left, the limo driver was still there?
Yeah.
Okay, Abe is the limo driver.
Yeah.
That just absolutely blew my mind. And I'm like, what? Did I just hear that? Because Abe never said that he went to that apartment, ever. As far as Juan Diaz and his alibi, we were able to go back to the video footage. And lo and behold, we see him get on an elevator right around 3:45. And what button does he push? The 10th floor.
And the elevator tapes do not show him regaining the elevator the rest of the evening. So he's not there, like he says. Certainly left before these people were killed.
At that point, we essentially eliminated him as our suspect. So now I need to go find a limo driver because he was the last person to be seen with James and Amy. He became my number one suspect.
Hello?
Hey, it's Detective Lacey.
Police called back again. I made it clear that I couldn't meet with them or talk to them for very long because I had a customer coming into the vehicle and had to take them to dinner.
I'm like, I don't care where you're at. Stop. I have to talk to you.
Is that Coconut Grove for the next 30 minutes?
Now it's almost like a cat and mouse game. I mean, in my mind, he's dodging me. I mean, the level of urgency was indescribable.
That night that the police talked to me, it felt very uncomfortable.
Listen up, babe. I'm going to ask you this only once.
I didn't want him to know you're my number one suspect, but I also wanted him to know, hey, well, you got to work with me.
Did you go back to James's house last night after the bar?
Yeah, I did.
Abe immediately admits it. Yes, I was there. I took them all back there.
Why didn't you just tell us that in the first place?
It's because of my job.
It wasn't done so much as to hide anything. It was because of the fact that I had in my control a company-issued vehicle.
He was using that limousine for personal services, and he wasn't supposed to.
Abe's explanation does make sense to Shalacy, but he still remains the last person that sees those two alive. And he's physically in that apartment.
And I said, tell me exactly what happened when you went back to James's apartment.
After Juan left, it was just myself, James, and Amy. And I was at that point drifting off because I was exhausted. I had to be back at work at 8 a.m.
Let's get rich.
And I realized that if I don't leave now, I'm not going to be able to function. So I made the decision to leave.
Hey, great to meet you, man. All right, get home safe. Okay? You coming back? Yep.
And at what time did you say you picked up your client again?
I've been with him all day. I picked him up at 8 this morning.
So there's no way that Abe could be in that apartment at 9 o'clock in the morning killing people when he's driving a client around beginning at 8 a.m.
There's no way Mr. Abe Metz was responsible for their deaths. His timeline matches up. His alibi matches up. So we eliminated him as a suspect.
So, is Amy okay?
When I finally told him that James and Amy were dead, he reacted the way I thought somebody that really cared about them would react. He was devastated.
Oh my God.
I was shocked. I honestly couldn't believe that something like that happened.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
What do we do now? Abe is not a suspect in this crime. He's not even a witness to this crime. We have literally run out of suspects.
We had a double homicide. And I so badly wanted to know who did this. So I go to Amy's family to find out, does she have enemies? Does she have people that don't like her? And, what kind of person is she that would ultimately cause what happened to her?
Honestly, if I'm worried about anyone, it's James.
Why do you say that?
I heard about James through my mother. I believe my mother said Amy is keeping company with this boy, and I don't feel good about it.
I never actually met him, but other people in my family have, and they all got this really weird feeling about him.
She says to Shalacy that it seemed to them that James had a fixation of romance with Amy, that Amy wasn't reciprocating.
She cared for him, and I guess he probably took her good heart, her good nature. He took it the wrong way, thinking that maybe there was something more than just friendship.
Did you talk to Amy about this?
Yes, we all did.
They urged her not to hang around with him because they weren't on the same level with each other.
Amy said, he's a friend. He needs me. He doesn't have anyone else. And I want to be a friend to him.
Amy's that person that she's going to stick by your side. She really kept her friends close, and, she's going to be that ride or die kind of person.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Shalacy doesn't know if this infatuation James apparently has with Amy plays a part in this case, but he knows enough to know that it could.
So I went back to that apartment because that apartment possessed the answers. It wasn't at Amy's parents' house. It wasn't at James's parents' house. It wasn't at the clubs. The real answers to me were in that apartment.
Shalacy starts looking at this apartment differently than he did before. Before it was all about physical evidence, but not now. Now he's looking for lifestyle indications. Who are you, James? Who are you?
Every square inch of that house I searched. In his bedroom, He had everything strewn all over the place.
But then Shalacy finds a pristine display of clothing, neatly pressed, hangers spaced exactly 2 inches apart. It's as neat as a pin. So what exactly does all this mean?
What's up, Rodriguez?
I get a call from Detective Rodriguez.
What do you say?
He tells me that James's father received a voicemail from James right before James's death.
The contents of that message could turn this case upside down.
It's game-changing information.
Detective Shalacy is at a loss for suspects in the murders of Amy Hoyos and James Glass. Just when he thinks that he doesn't know where to go next, James's father has discovered a voicemail on his cell phone,
What's up, Rodriguez?
placed moments before James Jr.'s death.
Dad, I said some bad things.
According to the father, James sounds depressed, defeated.
James tells his dad, you know, Dad, you always fix my problems. You always clean up my mess. But this is a mess that you can't even clean up.
James's father goes on to explain that James Jr. has taken antidepressants in the past, that he had a recent breakup with a girlfriend in Texas, and he took it very, very, very badly, and that James Jr. has a temper. And when he drinks, his temper can flare.
Okay. Thanks, man.
This was the defining moment for me. I'll never, ever, ever forget it. I was sitting on the bed, and a light bulb came on. It was like a halogen light bulb. They just lit my brain up. He's got unworn shoes, unworn suits in one area, but then his floors in disarray. I realized at that moment that he was living a double life. He was trying to live in the shoes of his father, and he was torn. He was just absolutely torn. He could not do it. Now I'm thinking that James killed Amy and then killed himself.
The most maddening part of homicide investigation is not having the answers you require. And the best of all of us in homicide, Shalacy being an example, do not rest until they find those answers.
So at this point in the investigation, I go to the autopsy because I know this was going to give us a lot of the pieces of the puzzle that needed to fit. The medical examiner ultimately tells us that the wounds on his arms that I thought were defensive wounds from blocking blows were wounds from the fall.
They're as a result of falling through a palm tree at high speed from the 14th floor because the coroner finds plant material in the wound sites. Further,
On the wrist?
the wrist cuts appear to be self-inflicted, superficial cuts to the wrist, which is not uncommon in people who try to kill themselves.
When we look on the chest,
The medical exam was very clear about the stab wounds to his chest. They only went in about a half an inch over the heart.
this is a self-inflicted wound as well.
So everything is explained as not being put there by someone trying to kill this person.
The ultimate cause of death for James was blunt force injury from the fall.
Let's go. Come on.
If his purpose was to end his days and he fell to his death from this balcony, well, who killed Amy? The only person there was James. Amy was James's last lifeline, his last grip on society. She was the only one that understood his feelings and his depression over his circumstances.
We know that Mr. Diaz and a limo driver left the apartment. They're out of the picture. We know that at some point, James and Amy leave the apartment and go out again because we see them coming in at 6:52.
You want another drink?
No, I gotta go to sleep. And so should you.
Do you want to sleep in my bed, maybe?
No, I'm good here.
Okay.
All right, night, bud.
Good night.
Hey, James, what are you doing? Hey.
I strongly believe that James was so infatuated and so in love with her that he made some advances towards her.
Stop.
Come on, Amy. I see the way that you look at me.
That's not what this is.
Yeah, well, what is it? Why do you just get off on teasing me?
Stop,
I'm not good enough for you.
Amy violently resists him.
Get off of me!
So when he felt this betrayal, he snapped.
What is it? I'm not good enough for you.
He absolutely snapped.
James Glass is depressed. He is concerned about his future. He doesn't believe he has one. He has a girl who seems to care about him, and he discovers she doesn't respond to him romantically. All this happens to him in a matter of a few milliseconds.
In that moment, he went into a rage. I think he went black. He thrust a scissor straight through her sternum bone into her heart.
That doesn't cause her immediate death. He tries to strangle her with the cord in the iron, and it breaks loose from the iron. Then he uses it as a blunt instrument and strikes her in the head with it. And this does kill her.
Then he dragged her lifeless body into the bathroom. He thought if he put her in the bathtub, that he could clean up what he did. But it didn't happen that way. He now is at a point where he realizes what he's done, and there's no way out. He took the life of this innocent, beautiful young lady who was the one person that listened to him, that understood what he was going through. And he took that away.
What have I done? I don't deserve to live. He tries to cut his wrist, and that doesn't work.
He even stabbed himself in the chest over the heart to say, you know, I'm not worthy. And then when that didn't work, he ultimately made that call to his dad, told his dad, Dad, this is a mess that you can't clean up.
I don't know what else to do. Tell everyone I love them. I'm sorry.
So what's he do next? He knows something that will work. He looks at that balcony. There's only one teardropped blood drop. One drop. He's not walking. He's running. Running to his death.
That was it. He was not going to fail at it. He failed at everything else, but he was not going to fail at that.
The murder of Amy Hoyos is closed by exception because the suspect is deceased, and the death of James Glass is a suicide, self-inflicted, no crime.
One of my biggest responsibilities as a death investigator was carrying that message back to the family to say, this is what happened.
Putting all the pieces together and figuring things out, James was obsessed with her. I wish she would have listened, you know, when I said, leave him alone.
At first I was mad, but then again, I thought he was sick. So I don't think that someone in their right mind would be capable of doing something like that. And so I have found in my heart to forgive him for what he did.
The way that it happened so tragically, it took a toll on me. It took me some years to kind of put her spirit to rest. I started running a lot of 5Ks, then 10Ks, and half marathons. And I ran a marathon. And every time I did these things, I've always done them in her honor. And so I would wear a button on my shirt that would say, running for Amy. In all honesty, that was always the thing from the start to the finish line, that I knew Amy was by my side, cheering me on, just like she cheered me on when she was alive. And just remember all the happier times.
I'll never have the chance to have that time with my sister, to share adulthood with her, to have her meet my children, and I'll never see her get married and have her own children. That part of it is devastating.
I will go as far as saying this case is the case that has haunted me the most. James needed help, but unfortunately it was the kind of help that Amy couldn't provide.
Amy did not realize or suspect that James Glass's depression was so deep-seated. Had she understood what a fragile condition his emotions were in, she would not have stayed in that apartment. She didn't believe James could hurt her or hurt himself. She was wrong.
Hazard Lights, a Miami noir. Based on the investigation by Joseph Shilesi, prologue, The Gravity of Silence. Saturday morning in Miami is a sensory overload. The sun doesn't just rise, it seizes the city, reflecting off the glass towers of Biscayne Bay with a blinding, predatory brilliance. At 9 o'clock, the salt air is already heavy with humidity and the faint scent of expensive gasoline. Michael Pearson was a man of routine. A resident of one of the downtown's glass and steel monoliths, he stepped out into the courtyard that morning thinking of nothing more than his car and his weekend plans. He was admiring the architecture, the way the palm fronds swayed in the artificial breeze created by the wind tunnels between buildings. Then, the world shattered. It wasn't a sound at first, it was a shadow. A sudden, dark streak against the azure sky. Then came the impact. A human body doesn't just fall, it detonates upon contact with the concrete. The sound, a wet, heavy thud that resonated in Michael's teeth, was followed by a silence so absolute it felt deafening. One moment, there was a quiet courtyard. The next, there was a ruin of flesh and bone just yards from where he stood. Michael didn't scream. He simply stopped. He looked at the shape on the sidewalk, a young man, twisted in ways the human frame was never meant to be, and realized that the Miami morning had just been permanently stained. Chapter 1. The 72nd hour. Detective Joseph Shilesi was tired. Not the kind of tired that a cup of Cuban coffee or a long nap could fix, but a soul-deep exhaustion that felt like lead in his veins. He had been on duty for 3 straight days. In the world of Miami homicide, 72 hours is a lifetime. It's a blur of yellow tape, fluorescent lights, the smell of stale cigarettes, and the faces of people who have just had their hearts ripped out. He was in his car, the engine idling, his mind already halfway home to his family. His wife, his children, they were the gravity that kept him from drifting off into the darkness he dealt with every day. The radio crackled. It was Rodriguez. "Sarge, you still 10 to 8? Shilesi sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Barely. Rodriguez, I'm heading out. What's up? We got a jumper downtown. High-rise on the bay. Looks like a clean suicide, but we need a supervisor to sign off. Look, I know you're spent. Go home. I got this." Shilesi looked at the dashboard. He could taste the home-cooked meal waiting for him. He could feel the coolness of his own sheets. But then, a shiver thin as a razor traveled down his spine. It was a sensation he had learned to trust over 30 years of service. It was the detective's itch. "Give me the address," Shilesi said, his voice raspy. "Joe, seriously, go home." "Address, Rodriguez." As he turned the steering wheel, Shilesi remembered the words of his old trainer, a man who had seen enough bodies to fill a stadium. "Don't you ever let them see you with that deer-in-the-headlights look, Shilesi. Not ever. People are desperate. They're looking at you to be the one who knows. You walk the walk, you talk the talk, even when you're dying inside." He pulled up to the complex 20 minutes later. The blue and red lights were already painting the white marble of the courtyard in rhythmic, nauseating pulses. Chapter 2. The Broken Angel. The victim looked younger under the sheet than he did when Shilesi pulled it back. He was a handsome kid, or he had been, before gravity had its way with him. There was a look of profound loneliness etched into the parts of his face that remained intact. Shilesi knelt, the joints in his knees popping. "What happened to you, kid?" he whispered. What was so bad that the only way out was over the edge? The scene looked like a standard suicide, a desperate leap from a high balcony. But as Shilesi leaned closer, his exhaustion evaporated. He saw them, small, jagged marks on the young man's arms. "Rodriguez, come here," Shilesi called out. The younger detective trotted over. What is it? Look at the hands, chipped fingernails, and these marks. Shilesi pointed to the forearms and wrists. These aren't from the fall. These are defensive wounds. This kid wasn't just falling. He was fighting. Shilesi stood up, his eyes scanning the 20 stories of glass balconies towering above them. Somewhere up there, a door was open. Somewhere up there, the air was still warm with the presence of a killer. Stop everything, Shilesi commanded, his voice echoing in the courtyard. This isn't a jumper. This is a crime scene. We need to find the room. The search for the magic floor began. They found the security director, a man whose eyes were wide with the realization that his high-end sanctuary had become a graveyard. They pulled the surveillance footage. 6:50 a.m. A car enters the garage. Shilesi watched the grainy black and white screen. The young man, later identified as James Glass, was driving. But he wasn't alone. In the passenger seat sat a young woman in a red track jacket. She was vibrant, her hair dark and flowing, a stark contrast to the grim reality lying on the sidewalk outside. Who is she? Rodriguez asked. She's our ghost, Shilesi replied. Find her, and we find the truth. Chapter 3. The Ghost in Apartment 1414. The breakthrough came from a pair of vertical blinds. High up on the 14th floor, Detective Rodriguez noticed something wrong. In a building of perfect symmetry, one set of blinds was fluttering outward, caught in the coastal breeze like a white flag of surrender. Apartment 1414. They didn't wait for a key. Shilesi felt the adrenaline now, that cold, sharp focus that comes when the hunt begins. They breached the door, weapons drawn, the metallic clack-clack of clearing the rooms echoing in the foyer. Clear! Clear! But it wasn't clear. The apartment was a slaughterhouse. Blood was everywhere. It was on the sofa, soaked into a heavy blanket. It was smeared across the hardwood floors in long, desperate streaks. Shilesi followed the trail. It led toward the bathroom. He stepped inside and felt the air leave his lungs. In the bathtub lay the girl from the surveillance video, Amy Hoyos. She was dressed in her underwear, her dark hair matted and heavy with blood. Her eyes were partially open, staring at a ceiling she would never see again. Shilesi had seen hundreds of bodies. He had seen the worst of what humans could do to one another. But as he looked at Amy, he didn't see a victim. He saw his own daughter. He saw the innocence that had been extinguished in a frantic, violent struggle. Jose. Rodriguez whispered from the doorway, his voice thick with shock. Shilesi didn't answer. He couldn't. He just stood there, holding his breath, feeling the weight of the badge on his chest grow 10 times heavier. On the sink sat a pair of bloody scissors. On the floor, a domestic iron, its cord ripped out as if used in a frenzied attempt at strangulation. There were cleaning supplies nearby, a pathetic, half-hearted attempt to wipe away the sins of the morning. Double homicide, Shilesi finally said, his voice a low growl. He didn't just jump, he was a victim too, or so it seems. But as he walked back into the main living area, he saw the closet. Chapter 4. The Two Faces of James Glass. To understand a murder, you have to understand the life that preceded it. Shilesi spent the next few hours digging into the history of James Glass and Amy Hoyos. He spoke to Amy's father, a man whose voice broke in a way that Shilesi knew would haunt his dreams. She wanted to be a firefighter, the father said. She was a caretaker. She just wanted to help people. She told me James was new in town, that he was lonely. She was just being a friend. The picture of Amy was clear. A ride-or-die soul who had the misfortune of being the only light in a very dark room. Then there was James. James Glass had come from Texas to make his mark in real estate. His father was a mogul, a man who fixed things. Shilesi looked around James's bedroom. On the floor, there was chaos clothes strewn everywhere, a life in disarray. But when Shilesi opened the walk-in closet, he saw something that chilled him. The suits were perfectly pressed. The hangers were spaced exactly 2 inches apart. The shoes were polished to a mirror shine, lined up like soldiers at attention. Look at this, Rodriguez, Shilesi said. This isn't just neatness. This is a mask. James Glass was a man living a double life. He was trying to be the successful son his father demanded, while drowning in a sea of depression and inadequacy he couldn't escape. Then came the voicemail. Rodriguez came running in, holding a phone. Sarge, James's father, just got this. It was sent right before the fall. They played the message. Dad, it's me. Look, you always fix my problems. You always clean up my messes. But this is a mess. Even you can't clean up. I'm sorry. I love you guys. The voice on the recording wasn't that of a victim. It was the voice of a man who had reached the end of his rope and had decided to take everyone with him. Chapter 5. The Anatomy of a Snap. The morgue is where the truth finally stops lying. Shilesi stood with the medical examiner as the sun began to set over Miami. The autopsy results were the final pieces of the puzzle. The wounds on the arms? Shilesi asked. Not defensive, the ME said, pointing to the plant matter embedded in the cuts. These happened on the way down. He hit a palm tree at terminal velocity. These are lacerations from the fronds. And the chest? Superficial. He tried to stab himself in the heart with the scissors, but he didn't have the stomach for it. Same with the wrists. These are hesitation marks. Shilesi leaned back against the cold tile wall. The narrative changed in an instant. It wasn't a double murder. It was a tragedy of obsession. In the quiet of the apartment, James had made his move. He was infatuated with Amy, the girl who was just being a friend. He wanted her to be his salvation, but she belonged to herself. When she resisted, when she told him, no, the mask of the perfect son shattered, he had snapped. He used the scissors. When that didn't work fast enough, he used the cord. When the cord snapped, he used the iron. He had turned into a monster in a matter of milliseconds, fueled by the toxic mix of depression, alcohol, and the crushing weight of his father's expectations. Then, he had looked at what he'd done. He had seen the one person who cared for him lying dead in his bathtub. He had tried to clean it up. Then he had tried to kill himself with the blade. When he failed at that, too, he did the only thing he knew would work. He ran. He didn't just step off that balcony. He ran toward the edge, escaping the mess that even his father couldn't fix. Epilogue. Running for Amy. The case was closed by exception. Suspect deceased. But for Joseph Shilesi, it was never really closed. Every time he saw a high-rise against the Miami skyline, he thought of apartment 1414. He thought of the vertical blinds fluttering in the breeze. Years later, Amy's sister would start running. 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons. She wore a button on her shirt that said, "Running for Amy." She was my ride or die, her sister would say. And now, I'm running for the life she never got to live. Shilesi retired a few years after that. He went home to his family, to the dinner, and the sheets he had longed for that Saturday morning. But sometimes, when the wind blows just right through the palm trees, he hears a thud in the distance. He remembers the walk, he remembers the talk, and he remembers that in the city of neon lights, the shadows are always deeper than they appear. The end. The Biscayne Descent. Author, Gemini. Based on true events. Genre, crime thriller, police procedural. Word count, extended novella format. Prologue. The physics of falling. Saturday, 9 a.m., downtown Miami. Gravity is an impartial judge. It does not care about your bank account, your heartbreak, or the pressed suit you are wearing. It only cares about mass and distance. For Michael Pearson, the morning was supposed to be a mundane ritual of sunshine and caffeine. He walked across the courtyard of the high-rise complex on Biscayne Bay, keys jingling in his pocket, mind drifting toward weekend plans. The air was thick with the humid promise of a Florida summer, the sky a piercing, relentless blue. He heard the sound before he registered the horror. It wasn't a scream, it was a disturbance in the air, a rushing wind that shouldn't have been there, followed by a sickening, wet thud that vibrated through the soles of his loafers. Michael stopped. He turned. A few feet away, the sidewalk was no longer just concrete. It was a devastation. A human form lay broken in a way that defied anatomy, shattered against the unforgiving earth. Michael stood frozen, his breath caught in a throat suddenly too tight. He looked up, tracing the trajectory backward, up the sheer glass face of the ivory tower, up past the balconies where potted plants sat undisturbed, up to the dizzying heights where the sun glared off the windows. Where did you come from? Michael thought, his mind unable to process the violence of the intrusion. And why did you have to land right here? The silence that followed was heavy, pressing down on the courtyard like a physical weight. Then, the screaming started. But it wasn't the man on the ground screaming. He was already gone. Chapter 1. The Weary Hunter. Detective Joe Shilesi sat in his car, the air conditioning blasting a futile battle against the Miami heat. He closed his eyes. letting the hum of the engine vibrate against his spine. 72 hours. He had been awake, moving, thinking, and hunting for 72 hours. The fatigue wasn't just in his muscles anymore, it was in his marrow. It felt like sediment in his blood, slowing his thoughts, blurring the edges of his vision. He was done. He had closed the file on the last case, filed the paperwork, and signed off. He was going home. Home meant silence. Home meant his wife, his kids, a cold beer, and a bed that didn't smell like precinct coffee and stale cigarette smoke. His phone rang. Shilesi stared at it. The screen flashed the name, Det Rodriguez. He could let it go to voicemail. He should let it go to voicemail. He was off the clock. He was a ghost, leaving the building. He picked it up. Yeah. Sarge. Rodriguez's voice was tinny, apologetic. I know you're exhausted. I know you're literally walking out the door. But we got a situation. There's always a situation, Roddy. That's the job. Shilesi rubbed his face, the stubble scratching his palm. What is it? We got a jumper. High-rise on Biscayne. Looks like a suicide. Messy. I'm tired, Roddy. I'm dead on my feet. Send the rookies. Let them bag it and tag it. I know. I figured you'd want to know. I'll handle it. Go home, Joe. Kiss the kids. The line went dead. Shilesi lowered the phone. He put the car in gear. He looked at the exit of the police lot, the gateway to freedom, to sleep. But something scratched at the back of his mind. A jumper. Just a jumper. Miami had plenty of those. Desperate souls who thought the view on the way down would be worth the sudden stop. But Rodriguez had called him. Why? Don't you ever let anybody see you with that deer in the headlights look. The voice of his old training officer echoed in his memory, clear as a bell. People are counting on you. Even the dead ones. Especially the dead ones. Shilesi cursed softly, a prayer to the gods of homicide detectives, and turned the wheel. He wasn't going home. Not yet. Chapter 2. The Anomaly. The scene was a chaotic ballet of flashing lights and yellow tape. Uniformed officers were pushing back a small crowd of onlookers, tourists with sunburns, and locals with morbid curiosity. Shilesi ducked under the tape, flashing his badge. The exhaustion was still there, a heavy cloak on his shoulders, but his eyes were sharp. He switched modes. He was no longer Joe Shilesi, the tired father. He was Shilesi, homicide. Rodriguez met him near the fountain. Joe? What the hell are you doing here? I told you I got this. I'm here, Shilesi grunted, walking past him. Give me 5 minutes. I take a look. I verify it's a jumper. I go home. Consider it a favor. All right. Body's over there. Prepare yourself. It's anatomical. Shilesi walked toward the white sheet that covered the ruin on the sidewalk. He had seen death in all its forms, bullet holes, knife wounds, strangulations, drownings. But gravity was a brute. It didn't leave much dignity. He crouched down, the knees of his suit trousers pressing against the hot pavement. With a gloved hand, he lifted the corner of the sheet. The man was young. Too young. Probably early 20s. Dark hair, handsome features, now slack and distorted by the impact. What would be so bad in your life, kid? Shilesi whispered. To step off the ledge? He looked closer. The detective in him began to override the human sympathy. He scanned the body, not as a tragedy, but as a puzzle. The impact trauma was massive, obvious. But Shilesi's eyes narrowed. He leaned in. Roddy, he called out, not looking up. Come here. Rodriguez jogged over. What's up? Look at his arms. Look at his wrists. Shilesi pointed. Amidst the road rash and the fractures, there were clean, distinct lines. Incised wounds. Cuts. Suicide attempt before the jump, Rodriguez suggested. Tried to slit his wrists. Didn't work, so he took the dive? Maybe, Shilesi said. But look at the hands. The fingernails, the nails were chipped, jagged, broken. These look like defensive wounds, Shilesi said, his voice dropping an octave. Like he was fighting for his life. He stood up, looking up at the towering monolith of glass and steel above them. 20 stories, hundreds of windows. I don't think he jumped, Roddy, Shilesi said, the fatigue evaporating, replaced by the cold electric buzz of the hunt. I think he was thrown. Murder? Murder, Shilesi confirmed. Stop the cleanup. Lock it down. We need to find the launch point. We need to find the crime scene. Chapter 3. The Girl in Red. The building was a fortress of anonymity. 20 floors of people living stacked on top of each other, strangers sharing elevators. Which unit? Rodriguez asked, looking at the facade. It could be any of them. Cameras, Shilesi said. This place smells like money. Money like security. They found the security director in a cramped office filled with monitors. He was a nervous man, sweating through his uniform. I need footage, Shilesi barked. Parking garage, lobby, elevators. Look for our John Doe. Look for who came in with him. They scrubbed through the digital timeline. The hours ticked back. 8 a.m., 7 a.m. There, Shilesi pointed. Pause it. Time, 6:50 a.m. A car entered the garage, a silver sedan. The driver was the man on the sidewalk. He looked intact, alive, but he wasn't alone. In the passenger seat sat a woman. She was striking, even in the grainy black and white footage. Dark hair, terrified or tired eyes, wearing a distinctive red track jacket. Who is she? Rodriguez asked. 2 hours and 10 minutes before he hits the pavement, Shilesi calculated. She comes in with him. Is she a witness? A suspect? A girlfriend? They watched the couple get out of the car. They walked toward the elevators. The girl in the red jacket looked unsteady, leaning slightly against the wall. We need to find her, Shilesi said. She's the key. If she's still in the building, she knows what happened. They canvassed the building, knocking on doors, showing pictures. The residents were ghosts, didn't see anything, didn't hear anything. The indifference of the city. Joe! Rodriguez's voice cracked from the courtyard. He was looking up with binoculars. I think I got something. Shilesi joined him. Where? 14th floor. Count up. 1, 2, there. See the blinds? Shilesi squinted against the sun. On the 14th floor, a set of white blinds was sucked outward, flapping violently in the wind against the exterior of the building. The glass door behind them was shattered or open. Unit 1414, the security director confirmed. Leased to a James Glass. Single male, 23. That's our guy, Shilesi said. Let's go. Chapter 4, 1414. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt like an eternity. Shilesi checked his weapon, though he doubted he'd need it. The threat was likely long gone, but the dread was just beginning. They stood outside apartment 1414. Miami police, Shilesi pounded on the door. Open up! Silence. Key, Shilesi ordered the manager. The lock clicked. The door swung open. The smell hit them first. Copper. Musk. The unmistakable, metallic scent of fresh violence. Clear the room, Shilesi whispered. They moved in with tactical precision. The living room was a scene of disarray, but not a struggle. A purse dumped on the floor, a cell phone lying on the rug. But the blood, it wasn't a pool, it was a map. Smears on the walls, drops on the tile, a heavy, saturated blanket on the sofa. This is the primary scene, Rodriguez said, his voice hushed. This is where he was attacked. Maybe, Shilesi said. He was tracking the blood. It told a story. There were drag marks, thick, wide smears where something heavy had been pulled across the floor. Joe. Shilesi followed the trail. It led away from the balcony, away from the living room. It led down the hallway. Toward the bathroom. The door was ajar. The drag marks went right inside. Shilesi pushed the door open with his foot, his gun raised. He stopped. He stopped breathing. For a moment, the hardened detective vanished. He was a father again. He was a man with a daughter. Oh God, he breathed. In the bathtub lay the girl from the video, the girl in the red jacket. She was stripped to her underwear. Her dark hair was matted, wet, and black with blood. The water in the tub wasn't running, but she was submerged in a crimson tide of her own making. She looked peaceful, in a horrific, grotesque way. Like a broken doll discarded by a petulant child. Is she? Rodriguez asked from behind him. She's gone, Shilesi said, holstering his weapon. He felt a wave of nausea, a rare crack in his armor. We don't have a murder investigation anymore, Roddy. We have a double homicide. He looked at her face. Young, innocent. I see my own children, Shilesi thought, a pang of terror gripping his heart. This could be my daughter. He shook his head, forcing the professional mask back into place. He stepped closer, careful not to disturb the evidence. Stab wounds, he noted, pointing to her chest. 2 of them, center mass, deep. He looked around the small room. It was a slaughterhouse. On the sink, a pair of scissors. Bloody. A clump of dark hair caught in the hinge. Murder weapon number 1, Shilesi catalogued. On the floor, a steam iron. The cord had been ripped out, fraying wires exposed. The base of the iron was stained red. Blunt force, Shilesi said. He tried to strangle her with the cord. It broke, so he beat her with the iron. Cleaning supplies were scattered around. Bleach, rags. He tried to clean up, Shilesi realized. A feeble attempt. Panic, desperation. He backed out of the bathroom, needing air that didn't taste like death. Who did this? Rodriguez asked. Someone came in here, killed the girl, threw the guy off the balcony? Maybe, Shilesi said. Or maybe the monster is already dead on the sidewalk. Chapter 5. Voices from the Dead. They identified her quickly. Amy Hoyos, 26 years old. A receptionist. A sister. A daughter. Shilesi sat in the living room of the apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of the morning. He needed to make the calls that no parent ever wants to receive. He called Amy's father first. Mr. Hoyos, Shilesi said, his voice steady but heavy. I need to speak to you about your daughter. He heard the silence on the other end, the intake of breath, the intuitive knowledge that the world had just ended. Is she hurt? The father asked. Sir, Amy is gone. The sound that came through the phone wasn't a word. It was a sound of a soul tearing in half. Shilesi closed his eyes. He hated this part. He hated it more than the blood. Next, James Glass's family in Texas. Mr. Glass, your son fell from his balcony this morning. Confusion. Denial. James? No, he just moved there. He's starting a business. He's happy. I'm sorry, sir. Shilesi hung up. 2 families destroyed, 2 lives extinguished, and he still didn't know why. He turned to the room. Find me a suspect. Someone hated these 2. Someone wanted them obliterated. They found Amy's phone. Locked. Get a warrant, Shilesi ordered. Break it open. Her secrets are in there. While tech support worked on the phone, Shilesi focused on the physical evidence. A bloody knife was found in the kitchen. The scissors in the bathroom. The iron. Overkill, Shilesi muttered. This wasn't a robbery. This was personal. This was rage. The phone cracked open an hour later. The last call made was to a local number, just minutes before the estimated time of death. Shilesi dialed it. Hello? A male voice. Casual. This is Detective Shilesi, Miami PD. Who am I speaking to? Who is this? Why are you calling me? I'm investigating the death of Amy Hoyos. Did you speak to her? Click. The line went dead. Suspicious, Rodriguez noted. Very. Shilesi narrowed his eyes. Track that number. I want a name. I want an address. The number belonged to Abe Metz, a limo driver. Shilesi hunted him down. It took hours of phone tag, of threats, of maneuvering. Abe was elusive, dodging the police, claiming he had clients, claiming he was busy. I don't care if you're driving the president, Shilesi roared into the phone. You were the last person to talk to a dead girl. You talk to me, or I drag you in cuffs. Abe finally cracked. He agreed to talk. He wasn't a killer. He was a terrified limo driver who had been partying with them. I drove them, Abe admitted, his voice shaking. We were at the club. Me, James, Amy, and Juan. Juan? Shilesi perked up. Who is Juan? A friend. Juan Diaz. Lives in the same building. A 10th floor. The plot thickened. A 3rd man. Shilesi went to the 10th floor. Juan Diaz was cooperative. He admitted they were all together. We went to the club, Juan said. Then we came back here, to James's apartment, around 3:45 a.m. Who was there? Me, James, Amy, and the limo driver. And then Amy got weird. She thought I was going to give James drugs or something. She was protective of him. She asked James to make me leave. So I left. You left them alone? No. I left them with the limo driver. Shilesi spun back to Abe. The limo driver had lied by omission. Abe, Shilesi grilled him. Were you in the apartment? Yes, I was there, Abe cried. I didn't want to say because I was using the company car for personal use. I could lose my job. You could lose your freedom, Abe. Did you kill them? No. I left. I swear. I had to work at 8 a.m. I left around 4:30. They were alive. They were. Fine. Shilesi checked the alibis. Juan Diaz. Security footage showed him getting off the elevator on the 10th floor at 3:45 a.m. and never returning. He was clean. Abe Metz. GPS logs on the limo confirmed he picked up a client at 8 a.m. He couldn't have been killing people at 9 a.m. Shilesi sat back in his chair. The suspects were evaporating. The boyfriend? No. The drug dealer? No. The limo driver? No. They were alone in that apartment, just James and Amy. So who is the third person? Shilesi asked the empty room. Who came in and killed them both? Chapter 6. The Voice in the Machine. Shilesi returned to apartment 1414. The answer had to be here. He walked through the rooms again, looking not for blood, but for the story. He went into James's bedroom. It was a mess. Clothes everywhere. Typical bachelor pad. But then, he opened the closet. Shilesi paused. Inside, the clothes were pristine. Suits hung with military precision, spaced exactly 2 inches apart. Shoes polished and aligned. Obsessive, Shilesi noted. Compulsive. Organized. He looked back at the messy room. Disorganized. Chaotic. 2 Jameses, Shilesi thought. The one he wanted to be, and the one he was. His phone rang. Rodriguez again. Sarge, you need to hear this. James's dad just called back. He found a voicemail. A voicemail? From James. Sent this morning, right before he died. Play it. Shilesi listened. The voice of James Glass filled the silence of the death room. It was a voice hollowed out by despair. Dad. You know, Dad, you always fix my problems. You always clean up my mess. But this is a mess that you can't even clean up. Shilesi felt a chill crawl up his spine. The tone wasn't fear of an intruder. It was guilt. James's dad says the kid had a history, Rodriguez said. Depression. A bad breakup in Texas. A temper when he drank. Shilesi sat down on the edge of the bed. The pieces of the puzzle shifted, rotating in his mind until the picture clicked into focus. The defensive wounds on James's arms? Not from a knife fight, from falling through the palm trees on the way down. The cuts on the wrist? Hesitation marks. Suicide attempt. The stab wound in James's chest? Shallow. Self-inflicted. Trying to stop his own heart. There was no third person. There was no intruder. Chapter 7. The Reconstruction. Shilesi stood in the center of the living room, closing his eyes, letting the ghosts reenact the tragedy. The theory. It is early morning. The alcohol is wearing off, leaving behind the jagged edges of reality. James Glass is fragile. He is broken inside, hiding behind a facade of real estate dreams and tailored suits. Amy Hoyos is there. She is the angel, the friend. She is kind, but she is not his lover. James, fueled by booze and a desperate, lonely obsession, makes a move. He confesses his love. He tries to kiss her. He wants her to save him. Amy pulls away. She is a good person, but she doesn't love him like that. James, stop. We're just friends. Rejection. The ultimate trigger for a man whose ego is as brittle as glass. The snap. James doesn't just get angry. He shatters. He grabs the scissors. He attacks her. Not out of hate, but out of a twisted, possessive rage. If I can't have you, no one can. If I'm miserable, you come with me. He stabs her. The scissors plunge into her chest. She screams. She fights. She scratches him, the chipped nails on his hands. He grabs the iron. He strikes her. Silence falls. He drags her to the bathroom. Maybe he thinks he can fix it. Maybe he thinks he can wash the blood away. He puts her in the tub, but looking at her, seeing the life drain out of the only person who was kind to him, the reality crashes down. What have I done? The guilt is instant and crushing. He tries to join her. He cuts his wrists. It hurts too much. He stabs his own chest. It's not working. He calls his father. The confession. This is a mess you can't clean up. He walks to the balcony. The sun is shining. The world is going on without him. He looks down. The only way out is down. He runs. He doesn't jump. He sprints. A final burst of energy to escape the horror he created in 1414. He hits the palm trees. He hits the pavement. Michael Pearson watches him explode. Epilogue. Hazard lights. Shilesi stood on the balcony, the wind whipping his tie. He looked down at the spot on the sidewalk, now scrubbed clean by the fire department. Case closed, he whispered. Closed by exception. It wasn't a victory. There were no handcuffs to slap on a bad guy. No trial. No justice, really. Just a tragedy of mental illness and unrequited love spiraling into violence. He thought about Amy, the innocent runner who just wanted to help a lonely friend. She didn't see the hazard lights blinking in James's eyes. She didn't see the crash coming. He thought about James, a boy lost in his own mind, drowning in a sea of depression that no one else could see until the waters rose too high. Shilesi turned away from the edge. He walked back through the apartment, past the scrubbed floors, past the empty bathroom. He walked out the door and locked it behind him. He went down to his car. He sat in the driver's seat and finally, after 76 hours, he let his shoulders drop. He started the engine. He didn't turn on the siren. He didn't speed. He drove slowly, merging into the Miami traffic, just another man trying to get home to his family. The end. The Concrete Fall, a Miami noir. Prologue, the sound of gravity. The sun rose over the Atlantic not as a herald of warmth, but as a silent witness to the carnage that would soon stain the polished concrete of downtown Miami. At 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, the city was just beginning to breathe. The humidity was already a heavy shroud, clinging to the glass and steel monoliths that lined Biscayne Bay. Michael Pearson was a man of routine. He liked the crisp feel of his linen shirt, the weight of his car keys in his palm, and the quiet dignity of the courtyard in front of his high-rise. He was thinking about coffee, perhaps a drive along the coast until the world fractured. There is a specific sound a human body makes when it yields to the gravity of 14 stories. It isn't like the movies. There is no cinematic thud. It is a wet, structural explosion, the sound of history, bone, and breath ending all at once. Pearson stopped. A few feet away, where a shadow had just flickered across his vision, lay the ruins of a man. The silence that followed was louder than the impact. In the distance, the palm trees swayed, indifferent. The weekend had begun. Chapter 1. The Deer in the Headlights. Joseph Shilesi stared at the reflection of his own exhaustion in the rearview mirror. His eyes were mapped with red veins, a cartography of 3 straight days without real sleep. He was a sergeant now, a man who had seen the worst of Miami's underbelly for nearly 30 years. But his heart still belonged to the quiet house where his family waited. The radio crackled. It was Detective Rodriguez. "Hey, Sarge, we got a jumper downtown. High-end complex on Biscayne. I know you're headed home, Joe. I got this. Go kiss the wife." Shilesi gripped the steering wheel. He could have said yes. He could have turned the car toward the suburbs, toward the smell of home-cooked food and the sound of his daughter's laughter. But a cold current moved through his chest, a premonition he couldn't name. "I'm coming in, Rodriguez," Shilesi said, his voice gravelly. "Stay on the scene." As he pulled into the courtyard of the luxury apartment, the flashing blue and red lights felt like needles against his tired retinas. He stepped out, adjusting his suit jacket, feeling the weight of the badge on his belt. He remembered his trainer's voice from 20 years ago. "Don't you ever, ever let anybody see you with that deer in the headlights look. People are counting on you. They're desperate. You walk the walk, Shilesi. You talk the talk." He didn't walk because he was arrogant. He walked that way because if he didn't look like he had the answers, the world would fall apart for everyone else. He reached the yellow tape. Rodriguez was there, looking pale. "What do we got?" Shilesi asked, looking down. The victim was young. Too young for this kind of ending. He looked like he could have been an athlete or a young executive with the world at his feet. But as Shilesi knelt, pulling back the sheet, the jumper narrative began to fray. "Look at this," Shilesi whispered. He pointed to the man's chest. Amidst the trauma of the fall were distinct, jagged marks. Stab wounds. And on the arms, thin, shallow lacerations, the kind of marks a man makes when he's trying to decide if he has the courage to die, or perhaps the kind of marks made in a frantic struggle. "He didn't just jump," Shilesi said, standing up. His fatigue was gone, replaced by the cold, sharp adrenaline of the hunt. He was pushed, or he was fleeing a ghost. Chapter 2. The Red Jacket. The security room was a tomb of flickering screens. Shilesi sat with the security director, their faces washed in the blue light of surveillance footage. "Go back," Shilesi commanded. 6:50 a.m. The grainy footage showed a silver car gliding into the garage. 2 figures emerged, One was the victim, James Glass. He looked tense, his shoulders hiked. The other was a young woman. She wore a bright red track jacket that seemed to vibrate against the gray concrete of the garage. "Who is she?" Rodriguez asked. "The key," Shilesi replied. They watched them enter the elevator. They looked like any other couple coming home after a long night in the neon haze of Miami's clubs. But 2 hours later, James Glass was a broken heap on the sidewalk. The canvas of the building yielded nothing at first. In a place like this, people paid for the privilege of not knowing their neighbors. Out of sight, out of mind. It was the Miami motto, until Rodriguez looked up. Sarge. Look at the 14th floor. The white blinds of apartment 1414 were fluttering, caught in a breeze that shouldn't have been there. They weren't just open, they were twisted, hanging out of the window frame like broken wings. Chapter 3. The Threshold of Hell. Entering apartment 1414 was like stepping into a different climate. The air was thick with the copper tang of blood and the sterile, desperate scent of half-used cleaning supplies. "Police, open up!" No answer. Shilesi kicked the door. The living room was a battlefield. A bloody blanket lay discarded on the sofa. Red smears trailed across the hardwood floors, leading toward the back of the apartment. Shilesi followed the trail, his hand hovering over his holster. He turned into the bathroom. The world stopped. There, in the porcelain white of the bathtub, lay the girl in the red jacket. Her hair, once dark and flowing, was matted with blood. She was dressed in her underwear, a picture of stolen innocence that hit Shilesi like a physical blow. In that moment, he didn't see a victim. He saw his own daughter. He saw every girl who had ever been told the world was safe, only to find the monster in the room. "Jose." Rodriguez breathed from the doorway. Shilesi couldn't speak. He stared at her, Amy Hoyos. 26 years old. Her purse had been dumped on the floor. Her life spilled out in a mess of lipstick, receipts, and a cell phone that wouldn't stop vibrating with unanswered texts. He looked around the bathroom. A pair of bloody scissors sat on the sink. An iron, its cord ripped out with a violent strength, lay nearby. "He tried everything," Shilesi whispered, his voice trembling with a rare, suppressed rage. Scissors, the iron, strangling her. He was determined that she wouldn't leave this room alive. Chapter 4. The Ghost in the Voicemail. The investigation became a journey into the architecture of a broken mind. Shilesi interviewed the families. He saw the devastation in the eyes of Amy's father, a man who had lost his tough girl, the aspiring firefighter who wanted to save the world. He heard about James Glass from his father in Texas, a boy who was supposed to be a real estate mogul, a boy who lived under the crushing weight of his father's success. James had a temper, the father admitted over the phone, his voice a ghost of its former self. And he took rejection. He took it very badly. Then came the voicemail. It was recorded moments before James Glass took his final walk to the balcony. "Dad, you always fix my problems. You always clean up my mess. But this is a mess that even you can't clean up. I love you. I'm sorry." Shilesi went back to the apartment. He sat on the edge of the bed in the master bedroom. He looked at the closet. On one side, suits were hung with obsessive precision, exactly 2 inches apart, neatly pressed, the image of the man James's father wanted him to be. On the floor, a chaotic mess of laundry and discarded dreams. A double life. A man torn between the suit he had to wear and the darkness he couldn't escape. Chapter 5. The Reconstruction. The medical examiner confirmed what Shilesi's gut already knew. The wounds on James's wrists were self-inflicted, a half-hearted attempt before he found a more certain death. The defensive wounds on his arms were actually from the palm trees he hit on his way down. The story wrote itself in the blood on the walls. They had come home from the club. Amy, the caretaker, the girl with the heart of gold, had stayed to help a friend she thought was just going through a rough patch. She didn't know the depth of the well she was standing over. James had made a move, an infatuation that had curdled into an obsession. Amy had resisted. She was his ride-or-die friend, but she wasn't his. When he realized he couldn't own her, he decided no one would. The rage had been absolute. The scissors, the iron, the sheer, frantic violence of a man who had lost his grip on reality. And when the silence finally returned to the apartment, when he looked at her lifeless body in the tub, the weight of the mess finally broke him. He had run, not walked. He had run to that balcony, driven by a coward's realization that some things can never be undone. Epilogue. Running for Amy. The case was closed. Closed by exception, the paperwork said. The suspect was dead. Justice was a cold, empty thing. Years later, Shilesi would still see her. Not in the bathtub, but in the stories her sister told. He saw her in the marathons her family ran, wearing buttons that said, "Running for Amy." He stayed in homicide for a few more years, but he never forgot the 14th floor. He never forgot the neatly pressed suits and the bloody scissors. In Miami, the sun still rises over the Atlantic. The high-rises still gleam. But for Joseph Shilesi, every time he hears the wind flutter through a set of blinds, he remembers the sound of gravity. He remembers the girl who tried to be a friend to a monster, and the boy who failed at everything except the very last thing he ever did. The concrete never forgets. Hazard Lights, a Miami noir, based on the investigation by Joseph Shilesi. Prologue, The Gravity of Silence. Saturday morning in Miami is a sensory overload. The sun doesn't just rise, it seizes the city, reflecting off the glass towers of Biscayne Bay with a blinding, predatory brilliance. At 9 o'clock, the salt air is already heavy with humidity and the faint scent of expensive gasoline. Michael Pearson was a man of routine. A resident of one of the downtown's glass and steel monoliths, he stepped out into the courtyard that morning, thinking of nothing more than his car and his weekend plans. He was admiring the architecture, the way the palm fronds swayed in the artificial breeze created by the wind tunnels between buildings. Then, the world shattered. It wasn't a sound at first, it was a shadow, a sudden, dark streak against the azure sky. Then came the impact. A human body doesn't just fall, it detonates upon contact with the concrete. The sound, a wet, heavy thud that resonated in Michael's teeth, was followed by a silence so absolute it felt deafening. One moment, there was a quiet courtyard. The next, there was a ruin of flesh and bone just yards from where he stood. Michael didn't scream. He simply stopped. He looked at the shape on the sidewalk, a young man, twisted in ways the human frame was never meant to be, and realized that the Miami morning had just been permanently stained. Chapter 1, The 72nd Hour. Detective Joseph Shilesi was tired. Not the kind of tired that a cup of Cuban coffee or a long nap could fix, but a soul-deep exhaustion that felt like lead in his veins. He had been on duty for 3 straight days. In the world of Miami homicide, 72 hours is a lifetime. It's a blur of yellow tape, fluorescent lights, the smell of stale cigarettes, and the faces of people who have just had their hearts ripped out. He was in his car, the engine idling, his mind already halfway home to his family. His wife, his children, they were the gravity that kept him from drifting off into the darkness he dealt with every day. The radio crackled. It was Rodriguez. "Sarge, you still 10 to 8? Shilesi sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Barely, Rodriguez. I'm heading out. What's up?" "We got a jumper downtown. High-rise on the bay. Looks like a clean suicide, but we need a supervisor to sign off. Look, I know you're spent. Go home. I got this." Shilesi looked at the dashboard. He could taste the home-cooked meal waiting for him. He could feel the coolness of his own sheets. But then, a shiver, thin as a razor, traveled down his spine. It was a sensation he had learned to trust over 30 years of service. It was the detective's itch. "Give me the address," Shilesi said, his voice raspy. "Joe, seriously, go home." "Address." "Rodriguez." As he turned the steering wheel, Shilesi remembered the words of his old trainer, a man who had seen enough bodies to fill a stadium. "Don't you ever let them see you with that deer-in-the-headlights look, Shilesi. Not ever. People are desperate. They're looking at you to be the one who knows. You walk the walk, you talk the talk, even when you're dying inside." He pulled up to the complex 20 minutes later. The blue and red lights were already painting the white marble of the courtyard in rhythmic, nauseating pulses. Chapter 2. The Sidewalk Symphony. The victim looked younger under the sheet than he did when Shilesi pulled it back. He was a handsome kid. Or he had been, before gravity had its way with him. There was a look of profound loneliness etched into the parts of his face that remained intact. Shilesi knelt, the joints in his knees popping. "What happened to you, kid?" he whispered. "What was so bad that the only way out was over the edge?" The scene looked like a standard suicide, a desperate leap from a high balcony. But as Shilesi leaned closer, his exhaustion evaporated. He saw them, small, jagged marks on the young man's arms. "Rodriguez, come here," Shilesi called out. The younger detective trotted over. "What is it? Look at the hands. Chipped fingernails. And these marks." Shilesi pointed to the forearms and wrists. These aren't from the fall. These are defensive wounds. This kid wasn't just falling. He was fighting. Shilesi stood up, his eyes scanning the 20 stories of glass balconies towering above them. Somewhere up there, a door was open. Somewhere up there, the air was still warm with the presence of a killer. "Stop everything," Shilesi commanded, his voice echoing in the courtyard. "This isn't a jumper. This is a crime scene. We need to find the room." Chapter 3. The Eye in the Sky. Shilesi found the security director in a cramped, windowless room filled with flickering monitors. The man was trembling, his hands hovering over a keyboard like he was afraid to touch it. "I need the parking garage footage," Shilesi said. Starting from last night, they fast-forwarded through hours of silence, ghostly cars sliding into shadows. Then, at 6:50 a.m., a sleek silver sedan pulled into the frame. "Pause it," Shilesi ordered. The young man, James Glass, was behind the wheel. He looked tired, but calm. But it was the passenger who caught Shilesi's eye. A young woman wearing a bright red track jacket. Her face was vibrant even through the low-resolution grain. She was laughing, her dark hair catching the artificial light. "Who is she?" Rodriguez asked. "She's our ghost," Shilesi replied. "Find her, and we find the truth." But as they tracked the elevator footage, things got murkier. They saw a man named Juan Diaz leaving later. They saw a limousine idling in the distance. The courtyard was full of life, but the surveillance tapes were a record of a tragedy in motion. Chapter 4. The Canvas of Indifference. "Nobody saw anything, Sarge," Rodriguez reported 2 hours later. His shirt was stained with sweat. "I've knocked on 50 doors. It's the same story everywhere. People have their music up, their ACs humming. In this city, if it doesn't happen in your own living room, it didn't happen at all." Shilesi gritted his teeth. "Keep knocking. Someone heard something. You don't go through a struggle like that in total silence." They stood in the courtyard, the heat now a physical weight. Shilesi looked up, his eyes trailing the sheer glass face of the building. He was looking for a sign. A broken window, a missing screen, anything. "Joe! Up there!" Rodriguez shouted, pointing. On the 14th floor, a set of vertical blinds was blowing outward. They weren't just fluttering. They were caught in the frame, thrashing in the wind like a frantic signal for help. "Apartment 1414, Shilesi whispered. "Let's go." Chapter 5. Crossing the Threshold. The hallway of the 14th floor smelled of expensive floor wax and recycled air. It was quiet, too quiet. When they reached 1414, Shilesi didn't wait for a warrant. Exigent circumstances. There was a life at stake, or the end of one. "Miami police, open up!" Silence. The lock gave way with a sickening metallic snap. As the door swung open, the smell hit them first. Iron, copper, the metallic tang of fresh blood. "Clear!" Shilesi yelled, moving through the foyer. The living room was a nightmare. A bloody blanket lay heaped on the sofa. Streaks of crimson marked the hardwood floors, like a macabre map leading toward the back of the apartment. Shilesi followed the trail, his boots clicking softly on the floor. He found the identification on the counter. James Glass, age 23, single male, successful on paper. But the trail didn't end in the kitchen. It led to the bathroom. Chapter 6. The Girl in the Tub. Shilesi pushed the bathroom door open. The horror of what he saw made him catch his breath. In the bathtub, curled like a child, lay the girl in the red track jacket. Amy Hoyos. Her hair was a matted, dark mass of blood. She was dressed only in her underwear. Her eyes were fixed on nothing. Shilesi knelt by the edge of the tub, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had been a homicide detective for years, but this felt different. "She looks like my daughter," he whispered, the thought slipping out before he could stop it. He saw the wounds. 2 deep stabs to the central chest, blunt force trauma to the skull. On the sink sat a pair of bloody scissors, their blades slightly agape. Next to them, a domestic iron, its cord ripped out by the roots. "She fought," Shilesi said, looking at the chipped nails on her small hands. "She fought for every second of her life." He stood up, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. "We have a double homicide, and we have a monster on the loose." Chapter 7. The Echo of a Voice. The hardest part of the job isn't the blood, it's the phone calls. Shilesi sat in his car, the sunlight mocking him through the windshield. He called Amy's father first. He couldn't bring himself to use the word dead. "Mr. Hoyos, I'm sorry. Your daughter. She's gone. The silence on the other end was a physical blow. Then came the sob, a ragged, gut-wrenching sound of a man losing the only thing that mattered. Later, he reached James Glass's father in Texas. The man was a real estate mogul, a man used to being in control. Something's happened to your son, sir, Shilesi said. Is he in trouble? The father asked. I can fix it. I always fix his messes. Not this time, Shilesi replied grimly. He learned that James had been struggling. He had a temper. He had been on antidepressants. He had been trying to live up to the image of the golden son, but the pressure was cracking the facade. Chapter 3. The limo and the nightlife. The investigation turned toward the last people to see them alive. Abe Metz, a limousine driver, had been in the apartment. Shilesi tracked him down while Metz was waiting for a client at a high-end restaurant. I was there, Metz admitted, his voice shaking. I was exhausted. We'd been at the clubs. James, Amy, Juan, and me. We were doing shots. Miami doesn't even wake up until midnight, you know? But I had to work at 8 a.m. I left before anything happened. Why didn't you tell us you were in the apartment? Shilesi pressed. I was using the company limo for personal business. I would have lost my job, Metz stammered. Next was Juan Diaz. He lived on the 10th floor. He was cooperative, perhaps too much so. He told a story of Amy being uncomfortable with him, of her wanting James to stay away from drugs. She was a caretaker, Juan said. She wanted to save him, but the surveillance tapes told a different story. Juan had left and never returned to the floor. The limo driver's alibi held up. He was driving a client at the time of the deaths. The circle of suspects was closing, but it was closing on empty air. Chapter 9. The pristine closet. Shilesi went back to apartment 1414. He needed to find the soul of the killer. He ignored the blood this time. He went to the bedroom. On the floor, there was chaos. But then, he opened the closet. The sight stopped him cold. The suits were perfectly pressed. The hangers were spaced exactly 2 inches apart. The shoes were polished to a mirror shine, lined up like soldiers at attention. It was a display of pathological order. Look at this, Rodriguez, Shilesi said. This isn't just neatness. This is a mask. He was trying to be his father. He was trying to be perfect. And he couldn't do it. Then the phone rang. Rodriguez was on the other end. Sarge, the father just found a voicemail. James sent it moments before he jumped. Chapter 10. The voicemail from the edge. They played the recording in the quiet of the station. Dad? It's me. Look, you always fix my problems. You always clean up my messes. But this is a mess even you can't clean up. I'm sorry. I love you guys. The voice was flat, devoid of hope. It was the sound of a man who had finally surrendered. He killed her, Shilesi realized. The truth, settling in his gut like lead. He didn't jump to escape a killer. He jumped to escape himself. Chapter 11. The reconstruction of hell. The medical examiner confirmed it. The wounds on James's arms weren't defensive. They were from the palm trees he hit during the fall. The cuts on his wrists and chest were